So we are about to live.
Okay.
Yeah. Yep.
Hey, how are you, Sachin?
Yeah, I am really good. I'm actually feeling excited today.
That's fantastic. That's fantastic. I'm also very good and also very excited myself. I've been having an early morning, very busy. But then I'm just thinking to myself uh, on this special topic that I want us to talk about today, which is the power of positive thinking. How can we harness this power and how can it impact our lives?
I remember a cliche that we used to learn when we were in school. Practice makes a man perfect. Practice makes a man perfect. So, harnessing the power of positive thinking is actually something like that. You know, if you keep um, if you keep thinking positively over a period of time, uh, it slowly becomes a habit. So
Yeah.
practicing thinking positively is actually the best way to harness the power of positive thinking.
Mm,
Because
beautiful.
having believing in something positive means believing in the possibility of the existence of something that we have never seen, something that we have never felt. So imagine you wanted to do something, you wanted to create something, and it has never been done before. And believing in the possibility of making that happen is actually believing the possibility of the existence of that very thing somewhere in the future. And it's an art. It's of course it's an art. It's an art.
Yeah.
So so this usually comes how we grow up, how we the kind of environment we are in. If you are in a negative environment, if you are in a negative habitat, you keep thinking negatively, and that in turn puts you in a complete unhealthy thinking habit. And if you think negatively over a period of time, that becomes your habit. And negative thinking, once negative thinking becomes your habit, you cannot help but just to think negatively. So everything that happens, you think, oh my god, that's because I didn't have the power, that's because that was supposed to happen that way, that's because, and then you put yourself as a reason, as a cause of that problem there. And when you put yourself as a problem, or as a problem, as the cause of that problem, you feel miserable inside, you feel that suffering, because now you becomes the cause of the problems. But when you start to think positively, you becomes the solution of that problem. That's the difference. That's the difference, and that's the power of positive thinking.
Wow, that's incredible. It's incredible because I'm just thinking to myself, I'm sure you'll correct me because we in this process of learning together. Uh, Negative thinking does affect our our health as it inflicts a lot of stress, a lot of anxiety upon us. And how can we deal with this negative thinking? Because I can see it's quite a big challenge for many of us. Our mind just, meander into negative thinking in a way that we are unconscious about.
Yeah. So yeah, I had the same situation. I had the same problem. You know, whenever something would go wrong, I would immediately think that it was because of me. It was not supposed to be that way, because I could never do that. So I would always constantly bombarded with this negative self-talk within me. Now this happens because, if you were to born in a very broken, in a very unhealthy environment, and probably, you might have lived within a unhealthy environment where people criticize you instead of seeing the positive qualities within you. So when you constantly see these negative things happening around you, when you constantly see all those failures, all those all those unhealthy things, negative things, you kept telling yourself now that it's not possible, that it's not worth doing. So when you see the negative results, and when you constantly ponder over it, when you constantly see that negative results, and slowly when you begin to believe, begin to accept that negative things as your fate, as something that cannot be changed, it becomes your habit. It becomes a part of you. And once the negative self-talk, negative thinking becomes a part of you, it's very difficult to get out of there. It's very difficult to, be not to think negatively. And the only way to do that, to rewire the negative self-talking or the negative thinking, and to start thinking positively, is to acknowledge, is to aware that I am driven by my self-belief, that I am driven by my, this negative thinking. So the first thing, in order to develop a positive thinking in our daily life, is actually consciously becoming aware of every negative thinking habit that we have. So, for example, I had lots of negative thinking habits. Now, I would say negative thinking habit. So, it's a habit. So, whenever I would look into the mirror, I would repeat myself, oh my God, I didn't look good. How would I do? How would I change my appearance? Because I didn't like myself. I didn't like the way I looked. I wanted to change that. And when I, started to, every time I looked into the mirror and I saw this ugly face of mine, which I thought ugly, but in fact is not ugly. And when I constantly, went through the same thought pattern, like, I looked into the mirror and I repeated myself, I didn't look good. I didn't look good. I didn't look good. And that constant repetitions becomes hardwired in my brain. So there is a saying in neurology that the neurons that fire together will wire together. The neurons that fire together will wire together. So when you constantly say something, when you constantly, think in a specific pattern, you're going over and over and over the same, using the same pattern with the same method or with the same talk. And when you do that, it becomes hardwired in your brain. The neurons that actually fire these self-negative talk actually becomes hardwired, and then you cannot help but to just think negatively. So consciously become aware of this habit. So maybe, when you sit in front of your friends, you may have an inferiority complex, that you're not good enough. So find out each of these situations where you think you are not good enough, where you think that it's not possible, where you think that you are not capable enough. So once we recognize, once we acknowledge these self-thinking patterns, then we can slowly begin to rewire the way we talk to ourselves, the way we communicate it to ourselves. I often say that happiness is actually the way you communicate it to yourself and to others. That's happiness. Because your happiness depends on the way you communicate to yourself in different specific situations, and how you communicate with others in different situations. And the way you communicate with the environment depends on the level of your mood. And so happiness actually depends upon the way you communicate, respond to the environment. So the best way to master positive thinking is acknowledging the negative self-talk, the negative self-belief, this negative self-thinking pattern, and then replacing each of these patterns with the positive thinking. So in my case, I used to tell myself, every time when I acknowledged that, the kind of self-image that I had myself was actually degrading me, pushing me away from my dreams, away from my, goals. When I realized that, I began to stand in front of the mirror and I repeat to myself, I am good enough. I am good looking. I have the capacity to do what other people can do. If and as I kept repeating that same pattern over and over and over, then it slowly began to affect my internal language. And as it began to affect my internal language, slowly I began to see the goodness, the positive sides, the strength within me. And that reinforced me. That actually helped me to discover the true person in me. The possibilities that that I thought never existed before. So positive thinking is actually an art. It's a way of seeing the unseen. It's a way of believing the unseen. It's also the creative part of thinking. Because when you believe in something, when you believe that something is possible, you try to find different ways to figure out to make that happen. And that's the path to creativity.
You are mentioning something important, but this is how human nature is wired. I don't know. It's the norm. Us as humans, we like to focus on the negative instead of the positive. And most of the times we miss what is positive and hyper-reflect on what is negative. And then that affects us as a result. How can we help individuals whom are hyper-reflecting on the negative things and missing the positive? I don't know if you understand me.
So can you repeat once again that, because there was some missing something.
Stuff.
Yeah, I missed something.
What I'm trying to say is, how can we assist people whose focus is within the negative things, helping them to focus on the positive things that they've been able to achieve or focus on in their lives, to help them actualize themselves around the positive things that are existing around them.
Yeah. I'm sorry. I just I lost my light here. So just okay. So I was just thinking on it. Okay, so that was a mistake. Okay, so what was you said again?
I'm saying, how can we help
The individuals,
the people who focus much more on the negative to actually realize the positive things that are happening around them so that they can actually realize, self-actualize those positive things and become better people.
Yeah, that's a fantastic question. In order to do that, you need to start to see, start to believe in yourself, start to think positively. And to start to think positively, as I said before, it's the same thing. Acknowledge, be conscious what's going on. And I think mindfulness meditation, or even it should, you can call it even mindfulness walking, mindfulness, or you can have a relaxing time being in mindfulness. So mindfulness is actually one of the best way to do that, because when you become conscious of what is going on with you, when you become conscious of your thought pattern, you begin to see, okay, how you think. And that's how you can actually unwire your thought patterns. Unless you acknowledge, it's not possible. So once you see these thought patterns and how it's rewired, because as long as you do not stop thinking negatively, as long as you do not stop, focusing on the negative things, you can never put your focus on the positive things. Because that's how you are wired to think. So to rewire, the best thing and the only one way is to become conscious. So become conscious. Sometimes, so how do we do that? How do we become conscious? How do we know, if we are thinking consciously or unconsciously? If you're thinking consciously, you know why you think the way you think, and you know its consequences beforehand. But when you think unconsciously, you're not aware of its consequences. You may not also be aware of, the process of doing that. But becoming conscious is seeing how this particular thinking actually helps me to, to achieve a certain goals, or to be what I am meant to be. And once you start to consciously see this, you will be able to, once you start to consciously ask yourself, what is going on with me? What's going on around you? So this is the time when you become aware of your environment. And that's the key to rewire your negative thinking habit. And once you become aware, think how this particular thinking affects you, and then bring something quite opposite of that thinking. If you think that you're not good enough, bring something opposite. Why don't you say that you're good? You are good enough. You are worth being who you are. So bring all those positive thinking, and it needs to be done consciously. Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Sachin, I'm just thinking to myself, if you could kindly explain the difference between being mindful and the difference of being conscious, because that might also be confusing to people who don't understand the terms.
Being mindful and conscious is almost the same thing.
Okay.
So being being mindful means being aware of what's going on within you, what's going on outside you. So you know what's going on within me. You know the emotions that are driving you. You are recognizing it. You are seeing them. And you know how that people are responding to you. So, since mindfulness is a term that's used most often in meditations, we can say mindfulness is actually a practice of being aware of what's going on within and what's going on outside. Now, conscious is actually very closer to the same thing. It's almost the same thing. Conscious is being aware, trying to understand what something is. But in mindfulness, there is no, not much effort, given to your mind. So you don't need to take much mind. So when you're mindful, you are only simply seeing it. Okay, I see this glass of water, and yeah, it is a glass of water. I see it as it is, and I acknowledge it, and I feel it. And then I look within me and I look how I feel about it. But conscious is can also be used when you say that I'm conscious of what's going on. So in a conscious, when you say that you need to be conscious in order to rewire your habit, that becoming conscious requires a little effort. Whereas mindfulness is actually fully relaxing and fully becoming just aware. There is no conflict, there is no fighting. You don't need to take all your efforts. It's just you see that person, you see his flaws, you see his weaknesses, you see his strength, and you accept him as it is. That's mindfulness. You see your internal conflict, you see all the problems that are going on within you, and you see, but mindfulness is the ability to listen to all those conflicts and accepting it. That's what mindfulness. But conscious is just becoming aware, seeing it. And sometimes conscious also means, taking the effort to analyze certain stimuli, to understand it better.
And they say, Sachin, on a different note, but on the same topic, is that sometimes we cause a lot of stress in our mind and our emotion. Sometimes when we want to change a situation that we can't change, we cause a lot of stress. So
yes,
now, how can we really work with our mind and make the mind work in our favor in order to adapt into that environment and change the situation or the circumstances? I don't know if that makes sense.
Yeah, I would love, love to I'd love I'd like you to just repeat that once again. Just
Like, one of my concern is that how can we work with our mind, our thinking, to be challenged in a positive way in a situation that maybe we can't really do anything about. Because many a times you find out that the stress and the emotional anxiety that you go through, it is because of our thinking pattern of failure to adapt into the conditions that are presented upon us.
yeah, you're absolutely right. Sometimes it is difficult because life isn't always easy. Life isn't always the straight road. There may be lots of times when you really wanted to give up, when you feel like it's not really worth fighting for, and there are certain things that we need to accept because there are certain things that we cannot change. So it's also it is also better to become conscious, because by becoming conscious of your thought patterns, once becoming conscious of yourself, you also acknowledge whether something is something can be changed or something cannot be changed. So in order to understand that, you need to become conscious and see for yourself. And if there is nothing you can do, the best thing is take your attention away from it and put somewhere else where your attention need to be. That's the best thing, because just imagine, I am trapped inside a four big walls, and I start to just fight hard. I start to pummel toward the wall, but nothing is happening. Once I acknowledge that I cannot actually beat down, I cannot actually to blow down the wall, it is always better to acknowledge that that is something that cannot be changed. Because when you accept that, you can go on easily without worrying too much, doing something else. So in this case, you can find some other way to escape from that. So in some cases, it's like you cannot do something because there is nothing you can do. There is nothing you do. You lost your loved one. What can you do? He cannot bring her back. Positive thinking cannot help you to bring her back. And that is not positive thinking. That is not positive thinking. That is foolish thinking. Because if you believe that just believing somebody will come tomorrow or in the future, it's not at all. It's not logic. Number one, it's not logic. So the best thing is accept the circumstances. What happened in the past is past. You cannot change it. You cannot go back to the past and change it. Can you? No way. What can you do? The best thing you can do is to change the now. Is to change how you behave, how you respond to different stimuli. If you cannot bring back the loved ones, you can do something for that person, right? So that may, for example, would that person be proud of seeing you as depressed as you are now? Never. Never. So what does that person want you to be doing? There must be something. Or what else you really want to do? So, it's also positive thinking is also the ability to take away your attention from where it is not necessary to be to places where it is necessary to be. So I hope I made that clear.
This is quite interesting. It's quite interesting what you mentioned in our last minutes of discussion, that I feel like we have to undergo through an attitudinal change, which is very important. And some people would say that they are unable to change themselves or to adapt to certain circumstances. But in either way or two, we must teach ourselves attitudinal change so that we'll be able to adapt and be able to cope. And in concluding, in what you just said, you said it's very important in order to stimulate the power of positive thinking to practice first. Practice is very important, and to believe in the world of possibilities. Without that, we can't achieve anything of worthwhile if our thinking engine is not working properly.